Wednesday, August 15th. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight we explain how we would handle panels for a large anime convention.
Let's do this. So check this multifaceted leader bit out. You ready for this? Okay, let me start a little bit before so I can lead into it. So I'm on the train to work, get to Grand Central. I gotta poop. So I go to the bathroom in Grand Central and I poop. And the bathroom's not the greatest there, but it's better than the bathroom on the train. Basically, you have to wait in line to get a less smelly but also smelly bathroom. So anyway, I then go down to the subway and I get on the subway train. And I go and I go and I go and I go. And then the train is pulling in to the station where I get off. And standing in front of me are two women. They're obviously complete strangers, and neither of them have any acquaintances or accompanying people. They're alone, all right? And one woman, one of the two, was fat and indignant.
You know, it's funny because when I got to work, Scott messages me and basically says, "Oh man, well, I got something to talk about on the show tonight," and he wouldn't tell me what it was, but he said it happened, something with his commute. And all I could think was...
Well, you knew it was something with my commute because I said it when I got to work. So when could it have happened?
So all I can think is it's probably either like a shooting or something, or it's some big fat indignant person.
So this fat indignant lady is getting in the face of the non-fat, non-indignant lady.
I'm going to already declare who is the right party and who is the wrong party.
Right. Now, I basically didn't hear anything that either of them said. Basically no words, right? But I watched them because it was interesting and I was getting off anyway. And they also got off. And the fat, indignant woman was getting fatter. Well, maybe not fatter, but more indignant and more crazy.
She probably was actually getting fatter. I bet she had a scone or something for breakfast.
Maybe. I don't know how you could lose weight when you're gain weight when you're expending that kind of energy. But
if you eat that much food.
Maybe. She wasn't super fat, but she was a fat person, right? So then, we're going for the exit, which are those, this turnstiles that stupid people fuck up, the ones that are open all the time. Because you can't jump over them. They're straight through. And the non-indignant person goes through, not saying anything, completely ignoring the indignant lady and just walking, which is what I would do. So I was like, hey, that lady's doing what I would do. Completely ignore this crazy lady and go to work.
Was the indignant lady still yelling or something?
She was yelling and doing whatever. And then when the non-indignant person went through the turnstile, the indignant person, grabbed it to try to hold them in there and yell at them.
Whoa! For me, that would have been a punch to the face and a call to 911.
Probably. But the non-indignant lady just kept walking to work. She just kept going. So I go through the turnstile, and I'm following behind. And the indignant lady begins to assault the non-indignant lady.
Really?
She grabs her hair and something and whatever, right?
Once again, I would like to stress that if a stranger grabs my hair, they're getting a broken nose.
Something like that.
And then the police are coming.
But anyway, the non-indignant lady, she just kept ignoring the indignant lady. She was sort of laughing, and she kept walking as much as she could, despite being assaulted. And I thought to myself, should I do something? I could do something. It wouldn't be hard. But should I? And I thought back to the only similar incident where I had experience, which was the purse snatcher. And I said, in that situation, someone was being assaulted by someone else, and it was perfectly legal and right for the people around who had nothing to do with it to detain the bad person.
I remember that story being great because more people came to stop and or in some way harm the purse snatcher than could possibly have helped. So everyone ended up just standing around while two guys got him.
So I stayed close, and I waited for the moment. And the non-indignant person took the indignant lady's cell phone and kind of tossed it into the street. Not out into the street, cars running over it, but out on the curb.
That's a pretty good diversionary tactic.
And then just kept walking. And then I sort of grabbed the indignant lady and I detained her for 15 seconds or so until the non-indignant person got away. And just by walking. She wasn't running or anything. She was just walking and sort of going, ha! I didn't hear a single word that either of these people said at all. I have no idea what was going on, but I was watching them the entire time from on the subway when nothing was happening and no one was doing anything to one person clearly assaulting another person who wasn't doing shit. And then after about 15 seconds, I just let her go. And the only words I heard any of them say was after I let the lady go, she said, "You see what she did to me?" And she didn't say it to me. Because she wasn't looking at me. I don't think she looked at me the whole time.
Indignant people never seem to make eye contact with anyone. They just kind of stand there yelling.
I was behind her because I was doing the old, the full Nelson without applying pressure. The standing up full Nelson where you can't hit me and you'd have to kick me, but you're fat, so you can't possibly kick me.
She could have just fallen over backwards. You would have been fucked.
No, I would have been fine. But we were in front of that gas station that Houston and Bleecker and Lafayette over there.
Wait. What did you say you were in front of?
Like the only gas station that I know in the city.
Because Scott, every time we talk about the city, he always ends up bringing up, there's no gas stations.
The number of gas, there aren't zero gas stations, but they are very, very sparse. And if you need evidence, just go to this gas station and see how many taxis go there, because where else are they going to go? Anyway, so I got to say, the most disturbing part, that's not really an eventful story. Someone was indignant and was assaulting someone, and I detained them for a short time, and then it was over. And that was it, right? Not very exciting. But I gotta say, three things, actually. Number one, touching that indignant lady was kind of disturbing. She was fat, and it really felt like she was just, like I was holding her, I had my arms around, under her arms and back around. Her arms felt like they were just soft and flabby from skin to bone. Like there was nothing there. And she didn't try to resist me either. And if she did, I didn't feel a thing. Like not at all. Like not even a slight pushing. So it's like she was just accepting me restraining her there. I don't know what.
Maybe through all that blubber, she didn't actually feel you.
Maybe. I have no idea. But, eventually, after the other person was away, she's like, all right, let me go. And I just let her go and went to work. And there was a guy at the after that, there was a guy at the gas station, right? Just a normal gas station kind of guy.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Hey man, when people are fighting, you just let them fight. She could have had a knife or something."
That fat lady?
And I was like, I knew she was all right. And I said, "You afraid of her?" And he didn't say anything after that.
Wow, you own that guy.
Yeah. I should have said something like, "You a coward?" But
no, that's
I think
good enough.
"You afraid of her" is fine enough.
That's good enough.
Yeah.
Right, I think I would have handled the situation all told a little bit differently.
Probably.
The only difference is, as soon as she touched the other lady, I probably would have interposed myself and called for the police.
Yeah, the thing I realized, though, is like, for something like this, calling the police means I probably have to deal with shit.
Oh, no, that's fine, because one, I have an excuse to not be at work now.
No, I don't want. I'd rather go to work than deal with be between the police and an indignant lady. That is not where I want to be. I want to go to work. I thought about that. And also, right, I wasn't going to wait around with these people for the police to show up when obviously the assaulted person didn't give a shit. They just wanted to go to work and be done with this person, as I could not blame them.
True, but at the same time, I feel like it's my civic duty to make sure that indignant people get stripped of most of their dignity.
I think she was pretty undignified.
No, because you realize that people like that, the dignity that they have left is pretty much just that they're still wearing clothes and they're not in jail. Because they can't feel the shame of all the things that they do beyond that. So unless you get them arrested or somehow naked, there's nothing you can do.
Anyway, the last bit I want to add to this, the meta bit that I think is more interesting than everything else, is that while I was sitting there thinking about what to do, right, I was considering, all the things I already talked about considering and such, And basically, one thing that entered my consideration was, man, if I do something, that'll make a great opening bit.
This podcast is going to get us killed.
No. So I thought about that for a while, and I said, hey, whenever we see famous people doing crazy shit, and you're like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? There's probably something a lot like what I just thought. Like, hey, this will make a great opening bit going through their minds. And they might not be as insane as we all think.
It's hey, when I get on Letterman, I can talk about this.
Or something. Who knows? But it sort of adds a little bit of explanation to why famous people or other such people do things that we would say, wow, they're fucking nuts. What's wrong with them? And they get all over tabloids, even though half of that stuff isn't true. But the stuff that is true, it's like, why are these people living these crazy lives? Well, because they're considering things like this, it'll make a great opening bit, or similar things that normal people, since you're not famous and you have no reason to ever consider those things, they don't enter your mind. And They might even actually be thinking, hey, I'll do this crazy thing. I'll be in People magazine or something. I don't know.
I will say I don't think that that's Tom Cruise's motivation.
No, I don't think so either. But I do think that, it made me realize, hey, famous people slightly less crazy by a small amount than I thought.
I just want to reiterate that we here at Geeknights 100% dislike fat, indignant people.
If you're fat and indignant, we don't like you.
You're pretty much at the top of the list of
You
people I don't
you should
like.
either get unfat or get unindignant. Probably both at the same
See,
time.
because someone who's just indignant, while they are very, very annoying, they're not also fat. And while someone who is like 300...
Yeah, imagine if it was an indignant lady and a non-indignant lady, and they were both not fat, it wouldn't have been disgusting to have to detain one of them.
I think my order of dislike of humans is pretty much at the top, people who commit genocide, and then indignant people.
I don't know. There are worse things you could do than genocide. Like...
Well, all right, people who personally commit genocide.
Well, no. You could just be completely indiscriminate and just kill millions of people for no reason. With nothing.
That's genocide, just against humans.
Well, genocide is specifically when you're like killing one race or one...
Yeah, one
kind of
race,
group.
humans. I'm just not getting that efficient at it.
Okay, I
It's
guess.
like in D&D when a ranger takes favorite enemy human.
All right, sure. Whatever.
But really, it's like indignant people who are also fat, and right under that is just indignant people.
And then fat people.
Maybe. People who smoke in the street in front of the building I'm trying to walk into are
Yeah,
up
they're
there,
pretty
too.
bad. They're usually also fat and indignant.
I always love the guys, because there's always a bunch of them where I work, smoking right outside the door to the hospital that has a big, law, no smoking within 50 feet of the hospital sign right behind
Why doesn't
them.
anyone do anything?
Cops walk by and harass them periodically, but...
All right.
And they go away, and then more people come and immediately start smoking.
They should paint a line around the thing that says you cannot smoke within this
Well, no,
line.
here's the best
And then
thing.
if you smoke within that line, they just take you to jail for a whole day.
The thing is, technically, because of that, you can't smoke anywhere in those city blocks because it's all hospital.
That's fine.
Oh, yeah, I'm fine with that, too, but...
But they should draw a line and say, if you smoke within this line, you go to jail for 24 hours. And you know what? In jail, no smoking.
No, I wouldn't jail them.
Why not?
Because there's a much better way around this, and that is to, one, take away their cigarette, and then to fine them some ludicrous amount, thereby enriching the city's coffers.
I think you could find them and put them in jail so they will be without cigarettes for 24 hours.
Anyway, what do you got in the news?
Okay, so this is actually, I guess, a serious news if you care about this person or if you care about people in general. There's an artist for Marvel Comics, I think for Marvel, but it is a comic artist, a famous underwear pervert comic artist named Mike Wieringo, and he died from a heart attack. He was like 40-something, or a heart disease. And it seems like, at least in my life, I don't know about other people's lives, there's a lot of dying of heart disease of middle-aged men. It's sort of common, and you should watch out for it. Like my uncle and my friend's dad and my other friend's dad and this guy. So middle-aged men in America, heart disease, dying, not good.
I think a lot of that has to do with poor diets, lack of exercise, sedentary lifestyle.
Partially. I'm a high risk, I think, in my future.
I'm quite certain that you are a moderate to high risk for heart disease-related death.
Even though my cholesterol is just fine. Anyway,
For now, you're young.
the thing is, this guy's art is really not so bad. Hey, I think I have one of his comics somewhere. I think Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man something. It's all right. It's good stuff. I
So
enjoy
what's
it.
he done?
He did, I think he started off working on the Flash in, 93, and he did, a recent Fantastic Four miniseries, and a whole bunch of stuff. And he's pretty good at the arts. But unrelated to this guy dying, prematurely, I guess, if you want to call it that, I realized something else. When you start looking at comic creators, at least American comic creators, artists and writers of underwear pervert comics from DC and Marvel, most of those people, sure, some of them are not, but most of those people are middle-aged guys who like underwear perverts. I think I know one or two female artists or writers of underwear pervert comics from Marvel or DC, and I know, if you look at some of the better ones, Brian K. Vaughan, he's younger than a lot of the other guys. The guy who writes DMZ, he's also younger than a lot of the other guys. And I think that is one of the main reasons now that I realize it. It's sad that I realize it because a guy died, but unrelated, I realized that part of the reason Underwear Pervert comics are kind of stuck in a rut is because you have this one demographic of people doing the large majority of the creative work on them.
Yep. In fact, despite the fact that, the comic industry seems to really be trying to kind of come back and take a stand against this manga business and actually sell some comics, regardless of their success or how we think they should do things differently, it still just seems that unless they change something, which might in the end just involve a whole new crop of artists and writers coming in, they're slowly going the route of sci-fi fandom.
Yeah.
Sci-fi fandom, not to disparage sci-fi or sci-fi fandom, but it has definitely gotten into a rut, a very deep rut.
Yeah, and if
you doubt me, go to a sci-fi convention.
Yeah, and I realize when I look at all the other comics, the non-Underwear Pervert, non-Marvel, non-DC mainstream comics in America, like the indie comics and the manga, the creators are sort of a mix of genders, a mix of, different ages. You got young people, you got old people, you got all sorts of in-betweens, and it's not just one demographic of people. And I think that's one of the strong reasons that the other sorts of comics are coming up with all the better ideas instead of doing the same thing over and over again, because comics are one of those mediums where there's a lot more making it for yourself than there is in other things. When Hollywood makes a movie, they're making that movie to make money. They're not making a movie because the director really likes the movie he's making. But in comics, when people write or draw a comic, there's a good chance that they like the thing they've written or drawn. And it's partially they wrote it or drew it for their own enjoyment to suit their own tastes. And when you have one set of tastes doing most of the creative work, like 90% plus, you're only going to get one kind of comic.
So, in other news, it looks like the New York Anime Festival is once again doing everything right, or at least as far as we can tell, because they've already announced at least one of their musical acts.
Oh, so early. The con's not until December. They must be on the fucking ball.
Well, considering, we're pretty much already set to go with the New York Anime Festival, but they've got Unicorn Table, which, according to the Anime News Network,
a J-pop band of some sort, or J-rock, I don't know.
Japanese pop rock.
Okay, it's a J-proc.
J-proc?
J-proc.
But yeah, I don't have much to say about that, but what I do have to say is that if you live anywhere in the New York City area, it really might be worth your effort in December to come check out the New York Anime Festival, at least for one day.
Yeah, in short, I used to think that I'm still skeptical, and I thought that the New York Anime Festival was going to be a complete and utter failure because it's run by the same company that runs the New York Comic Con. It's for profit. It's in the Javits Center in New York in December. And all those things are like, whoa, that's not a good formula for an anime con.
The only reason it's not a good formula is just that if you've been to anime cons aren't like any other kind of convention. And just the things that people do at them and the way the crowds react to things and the things the crowds expect to be there, if you don't know, you don't have any sort of expertise as to exactly how to deal with these people, you're not going to have a good time running a con.
And the environment, in the winter, bad weather, in the Javits Center, bad convention center, for profit, lots of money, things aren't going to be run the way they're run at a fan-run convention, pissing off a lot of the goers who are used to fan-run conventions. It's not a good recipe, but they have gotten my hopes up because they have said, it appears to me from information I know, that they are outsourcing.
We've already talked about this a bunch of times.
Have we?
Yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't going to bring that up at all.
They're outsourcing a bunch of the stuff to people who know how to do it. It's like, to other people.
Well, it's not just that. It's more that they're also just looking and asking people who do run these cons, so how do you deal with anime fans? And they seem to really have done their research on this crowd.
Yep. So I think they're going to do maybe the best they can given the unavoidable circumstances.
I think it's going to be a pretty good con. We're going to be set up. We have an artist alley table.
It'll be fun for me, whether or not it's fun for you and worth your money.
Well, we've got an artist alley table. Dave and Joel said they want to come with us and do some stuff, but they haven't gotten back to me since then.
Maybe.
So I guess I'll light a little fire under their collective ass.
Yep. And New York Anime Festival. We're actually going to go to it.
We'll talk about it a lot more as the event comes up. It's
December.
August. It's many months away. But suffice to say, we are running our match game ×2, and we're running a panel somewhat similar to the one we ran at Otakon, but with a much more educational bent and a much less rape-tacular bent. things of the day.
This thing of the day combines so many things. I think it is the ultimate thing of the day in terms of things it has. You ready? It's from the TV in Japan blog. Of course, Japanese television always saving the day on Wednesday when I have no better thing of the day to go for.
Yeah, code speak for if we're lazy, search for Japanese TV, there's gonna be something.
Yep, so get ready. You know what this is? It's a Japanese TV show that shows guys making stuff with Legos that's pretty crazy. All right, so you got Legos and you got Japanese TV. What else do you have here? Well, at the very beginning of the first video, I hear some Paul Oakenfold music going on, so you got some trance. There's another geeky thing. Now you've also got, they're making, one guy makes like a otaku maid, like a maid. And so there you got otaku and moe going on.
That's kind of creepy.
Yeah, but most of the people make animals and robots and that sort of thing. And it's a 7-part video, and I'm linking to where there's only parts 1 and 2, but then they have a link to parts 3 through 7 on a YouTube channel that you can go to. And if you like Legos, Japanese TV, and all sorts of nerdy stuff all in one, this is quite a thing of the day.
So, we talk every now and then about how anime music videos used to be funny or awesome back in the day, and we're sick of a lot of the ones we see at cons now. Here is one of the anime music videos that we showed at the RIT Anime Club a long time ago to raucous applause and thunderous laughter.
This is one of the funniest and most creative music videos.
Now, part of the charm
anime
of it
music videos
is that it was made really kind of crappily on bad equipment and poorly. It's not the most technically well-done video.
The resolution is low.
I mean, you think YouTube's making it look bad? No, it looked that bad.
It's a pretty bad video. I think I had a flash of it originally. I don't really remember, but it's a low-quality video.
The thing is, it proves that if you have the core idea for a video that's good enough, and you do enough clever things with the music to make it match in a good way, a video, no matter how crappily it's made, can be awesome. So,
I mean, people made videos back in the day, like the Jeff Teteric with like 2 VHS decks, and some of them were great. So there's no reason why a low-resolution, low-production value video can't be awesome as long as the concept and the execution of the concept are awesome.
Granted, I still think, and I've said this before, that the only reason we say music videos suck today is that due to the ways that anime conventions handle their anime music video contests, it almost self-selects against the good videos, because they usually won't let you enter their contest if you've already won somewhere else.
Yes, if I was going to say, I said it before, I'll say it again. If I ran an anime convention and had any decision-making power over the AMV contest, my anime convention would only allow you to enter your video if you had won a contest, not entered, but won a contest since the past, edition of my convention. So if I had my convention on August 1 every year, if your video didn't win some award...
If your
video didn't win an award at another convention that wasn't mine, since August 1st last year, I'm not going to let you show it at my convention because if it didn't win an award, it sucks.
I think there was an easier way to phrase that.
Yeah.
The video had to have won an award within the past year?
Something like that.
Yeah.
I got to be real specific, though, because, these people...
No, you really don't, because people don't really harp on you about things like that.
No, but you should see people... You imagine if you're running an anime convention. You
put
up your list of rules.
Scott, if I was actually running it, then yes, I'd write the rules that way. But if I was describing the idea to someone, you got... Because, I mean, Alex and I actually laugh at you a lot about this, just because whenever we talk about a board game, and you find out about a board game that we don't know about, and you want to tell us about it, instead of telling us the core idea first, you go on for like 10 minutes about the minute details that we don't care about.
I gotta be real specific.
No, you don't. Tell people the core.
You jump on me anytime if I leave something out or if it's vague. You're like, oh.
But you start with the core. You gotta sell it on the core. Sell the idea on the core. Like, how about a music video contest that only allows the best music videos in, the ones that won contests recently? Not imagine a music video contest.
How recently?
Within the last year.
Well, what if your convention was like a year and a week ago, and my video won an award in that week?
Tough shit.
Doesn't
matter.
You see where I'm going, though.
Yeah, I see where you're going.
All right.
But anyway, speaking of running anime conventions, we've talked about doing a show like this for a while, partly because I don't want to bother writing an email to certain interested parties as to how I would do this. But you all know that Otakon had some trouble with its panels department this previous year.
And not only did Otakon have trouble with their panels department, but pretty much fan-run cons, all cons that I've been to, anime cons at least, gaming cons too, in general.
Gaming cons, a million times worse,
yes,
but we won't get into that.
But cons in general that I've been to how many years we've been going to cons?
A long time.
They always either have panels that are run sub-perfectly for whatever reason. It might not be the fault of the people running them, but either panels that are run with some problems or the quality of the panels is low. And while you can't guarantee quality of panels when the panels are run by fans, you can raise the bar. It is possible.
Well, I mean, the real thing is, these are people running things for fun. They're like fan panelists. I want to run a panel about Naruto and whatever. And that's really what it's all about. But at the same time, cons don't really seem to worry about checking these people out at all or making any effort to find out if these people are actually going to run a panel, if they have even a shred of professionalism, if they even know about the topic they're doing their panel on, if they're even going to show up. And this isn't an indictment against Otakon, because Otakon
I know a lot of people think we're talking about Otakon specifically because the recent problem, but we're not. We're talking about all cons.
Yes, because
all of them.
Otakon's problem wasn't really that. There was a specific problem that happened before the con in the staff, and despite that, all cons, most of the fan panels are just really crappy and unprofessional,
yep.
and they usually end up either being the one mumbly guy who shows up, spends 10 minutes in front of the assembled crowd fiddling with his laptop because he can't make it work, and then mumbles about Resident Evil for an hour. Or it's like the 10 guys all sit up at the front and kind of make inside jokes at each other for an hour.
Yep. And while not all of the fan-run panels are like that, there are too many that are like that. And even if cons do some of the things that we're going to talk about to filter out some of the bad panelists and such, they're not doing them well enough, and they could be doing it better. And we're going to tell you right now in this episode, if we were the gods of running panels at a fan-run convention, anime or otherwise, this is what we would do to make the panels awesome, guaranteed, with such an incredibly small chance of failure, like the convention center would have to set on fire to fuck it up.
Now, a bunch of how we're going to set this up. For one, this is not just like, oh, pie in the sky if we had the resources. This is what me and Scott together could do for an anime convention, straight up without any impact on our lives.
Yep.
You could almost consider this an offer
to any anime convention that wants someone to run their panels that's nearby.
Any large anime convention.
Yeah, I'm not going to run it. I could run panels for a really small convention. It would take me a day.
Well, the second thing is that we're assuming that this is a large anime convention, one of the bigger ones, because, I mean, if a con is really small and like 4,000 or 2,000 people show up, you can't really pick and choose because you're probably going to get less panel applications than you have panel time anyway. But a con like Otakon or Katsucon, they're so gigantic, and so many people want to run panels that you'd think they could pick and choose a little bit and at least get, the above-average panelists overall over time.
Yeah, I mean, I understand with something like the Artist Alley, right? You might be thinking, Artist Alley is first come, first serve, which is as it should be. But, you might be thinking, well, if the panels should also be first come, first serve. And Artist, if you're going to pick and choose for quality on panels, you should pick and choose for quality in Artist Alley, which sort of seems wrong. But they're sort of different in that the Artist Alley is sort of like you're selling tables. So choosing who you're going to sell to is sort of like discriminatory. Whereas choosing who gets to be an entertainer, it's not the same thing. Don't make them equal. I could make a better case, but whatever.
Well, it doesn't matter because we're really narrowing this down. Mm-hmm. The other thing is we're not going to talk about industry panels, guest panels, any of that. We're going to assume that either we can handle that on our own, or that another part of the staff body of our fictional con, we'll call it Con.
Yep, industry and guest panels are basically sort of this automatic thing. If industry or guests want panels, they get them. Then we schedule them before we schedule anything else. They take precedence, the end of story. And we make sure that the industry and the guests don't screw up their panels, but usually they're very professional and they don't.
So, of course, the first thing we have to talk about is communication, because no anime con does this, as far as I know, and I'm really surprised. Why don't they just use Google for domains and Gmail for domains?
I have no idea why they don't use that. It's because I've noticed, and I used to think, there's so many overlaps between geekeries. It's like video gaming people, anime people tend to like video games. Video gamers tend to like technology and computers, right? But it doesn't go all the way across, and anime people are mostly not technology people, and they really have a hard time with computers. I'm always surprised at anime people who, they don't know much about computers. They know how to go on YouTube and 4chan, and it's more than the average person, but for the most part, they don't know shit, and they should listen to Geeknights Mondays.
Yep. Now, I'm not going to get into all the details of why we would do that. We could do a separate show on that even, exactly why cons should use Gmail for domains. But suffice to say, we would set it up so that whatever, panels at concon.com goes to both myself and Scott and goes to the head of our department and to the con chair. Now, maybe in a separate folder or a separate tag so they don't see all those messages, but if Scott and I suddenly die, all those messages are still there. Or also, if there's a problem, higher-ups in the chain of command can look at what we're doing, because, of course, we are obligated to use our con addresses for any and all correspondence related to the con. So many cons, they'll be like panels at thecon.com, but then whoever's running the panels will decide that they want to use their AOL account, and they'll tell people, yeah, you should contact me this way instead. And that's crap and unprofessional. I'm not going to say anything beyond that.
Another thing is that we would make sure, because whenever I send an email out, let's say I'm the panels guy, and I get an email at panels whatever, and I reply to it, I will BCC it to panels at whatever. That way, the people above me in the ranks of the con can see the emails I am sending out as well as in. And they should be monitoring me, as they should be monitoring all the staff they are directly responsible for.
I mean, maybe not actively.
Not actively, but if they see that I'm not responding to emails, within a day or two, if I don't get on that, I should be fired and someone else should replace me, as should any position that requires communication with the public.
Now, also along those lines, very clearly and stated on the website and everywhere, we would say, and in any correspondence, we even have a little footer that would say, if you email us, the panels guys, and you don't get a response within 48 hours, email us again. If you do not get a response to that within 48 hours, alternate contact info that goes to someone higher up than us who can kick our asses.
Yep, and if, pretty much the only way that system can fail is if the entire chain of, command in the convention is irresponsible and doesn't check their email. This goes for anything, conventions or not. If you have an email address that is public and you're requesting people, to email it for whatever reason. Let's say you're accepting job applications, or you're asking for feedback on an RFC, or who knows what. You should be checking that email address all the goddamn time, constantly. No one should ever email you and then be worried that you didn't get it, or not knowing if you got it. Or you got to put up the auto away messages when you go on vacation. You have to do those things. If people email you and then they don't know what the status is, and they're forced to wait more than 48 hours to know what's going on, at least an auto confirmation email or something.
Yes, what I would do is, no matter what, even if I couldn't respond right away, say we're super busy with stuff, even though I'm reasonably certain that even for the largest anime con, I could personally respond to any and all emails that came into the panel's email address.
I also could.
Within 48 hours.
So with two of us, we could do it super easily.
But I'd have a couple of boilerplates ready that basically said, I've received your email. We will get back with you within X amount of time. If you don't hear from us within X amount of time, email us again or contact this person.
The number one problem I have with pretty much communicating with people I don't know on the internet professionally is that I email them and they just never reply. And I know I emailed them. It's in my sent emails box. The address is correct. What's wrong with them? Check your email. If you're not checking your email, You're not cut out for the job. Do something else. This is not for you.
Well, like last year, we did all these cons and all our shows everywhere. And the only con we wanted to do things at that we didn't it was Anime Next. Because I emailed them 4 or 5 times.
One of the guys who runs AMVs at Anime Next is a listener, and I met him at Otakon, and I know him, and he's kind of cool. And even so, didn't help anything.
Yeah, just no one ever responded to any address I sent anything to at that con. So eventually I just said, fine, we're not going to bother giving you guys our content. And I like Anime Next, but unless they contact us, I don't know if any of them listen, they're never going to get us there.
I just told you one of them listens.
Yeah, maybe other of them should.
Maybe they should, but respond to email. All the email addresses that are on your website, if someone emails any of those, they should get some sort of response very quickly. You should not leave anyone hanging ever for any reason. There's no reason. Email is so easy. What's wrong with you? Learn to type.
Now, obviously, the exceptions to that are like the super high staffers, like the con chair and the whatever.
The con chair's job is not to respond to email.
The people who shouldn't be dealing with the public directly on a day-to-day basis. And in that case...
But I'm saying every email address, it's someone's job to deal with.
I'm saying even with those, it'd be pretty easy to have a boilerplate that basically says you should probably contact someone else for your concern.
Yeah. All right, even so. All right.
So, the second thing is time. Now, I don't think it's out of the realm that I would say that, say the con ended this past weekend, and, con, and the next con is a year from now. I would start planning the panels about 2 weeks after the previous con ended.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like, if you know that you're going to have another con, and it's not some question mark sort of thing, why not get started on panels immediately? I mean, you know that you're going to need, many, many hours of panel entertainment. Why not give people an entire year to get ready for it? There's no reason not to start right away.
In the very least, the first thing I would do is, now we'll talk about how I would decide who to contact later when we talk about what to do at the con. But I would email everyone who did a panel that was good in some way based on the metrics we had and basically say, all right, you did a good job. Get in touch with us once you have ideas for what you might like to run next year. And I can pretty much guarantee that we'll give you high consideration.
Yep.
I'd maintain relationships with all the people who did good panels in previous years. And I'd keep in contact with them throughout the year to make sure that if they want to do something, and I think that what they want to do is good, and I know they've done good things in the past, that I am there to help them do the thing they want to do.
But on the same token, if someone did a bad panel, I would make sure to note who they were and not let them do a panel again, even if they ask and are very nice and professional.
Yes, we would definitely have the good list and the shit list. Now, these would be private and internal and secret.
Yes,
of course.
You don't tell people that they're on the shit list or the good list, but you do it. There's no, what's wrong with you? The other thing is that, remember, we were just talking about, responding to emails. In the same way that the con has to respond to emails very quickly and efficiently, so do the panelists. If I email panelists and they don't get back to me, they're just forget about you. You're not. If you don't respond within the dates that I set, if you miss the deadline by a day, forget you. I got other people.
Yep.
There's more people who want panels at this con and could do a good job than there is time for there to be panels. Therefore, I have no problem just kicking people off for the slightest reason.
Now, early on, for the months after the previous con ended,
you don't kicking people off then because it's so early.
Yeah, the deadlines would pretty much be, like, I'd set a point, like maybe a month before the con, whereupon panelists must maintain either semi-constant contact, like once a week, I'm going to email you to check on your status, and I want you to respond to me. Of course, we could set up considerations for, I'm going out of town for 2 weeks before the con, but I'm committing to being there. Those kinds of people, you make exceptions.
Yeah.
It's not a hard,
I would
rule.
know everyone's situation, whatever that situation was.
The moral
it
is,
would be documented.
If I cannot get into contact with a panelist in the month before the con, and I try, and I give them all the time I can give them,
and I don't know where they are,
they're not getting a panel. And if they show up at the con and say, I thought I had a panel, well, they're not getting one.
Why didn't I hear from you when I emailed you? I didn't hear from you. I thought you died, or I couldn't guarantee that you were going to show up and do this panel, so I just canceled you.
Now, along those lines, if a panelist, gives an application and the email address they give me is not valid and bounces, I am not going to attempt to contact them again, and they do not have a panel.
Yeah, basically, as long as I was at a big enough con where the demand for panels was less than the supply, I would basically...
Well, I think you mean the other way around.
No, the demand for panels is less than the supply of time to do panels in.
Oh, you mean the demand of people? What demand are you talking about?
There are more people who want panels, the demand, than there are panels to give out.
Because normally it's the demand as in how many panels does the con need?
I'm talking about demand from the people, not demand from the con.
All right,
so the con has has less of a demand. Whatever, you get the point.
There are more panelists than panel slots to fill.
Exactly.
Yes.
Then I would have no qualms about just canceling panelists and eliminating them for even what some people would consider to be slight transgressions. I mean, if I say this is the application form to fill out to apply for a panel, and someone fills out the form improperly, no second chances. You're done. I would just immediately throw those in the trash.
I mean, it depends on how many panels we need.
It does.
Because I would probably email them back and say, all right, you did not fill the form out correctly. Try again.
It depends, but if it's deadline time.
Oh yeah, maybe we should split it up. All this, being harsh with panelists, and if you're not in contact and we can't talk to you and you don't fill things out right, then you're done. That is all reserved for the month before the con.
The point that I'm trying to make is that it'll be much more harsh than conventions currently are. Because you have no reason not to be more harsh. That's the way to up the quality, is to cut the wheat from the chaff.
Now, in terms of the applications themselves, I would probably set up, if the con could get it, I mean, a lot of con websites are really piss poor behind the scenes, but some sort of panels application on the website. But
if I could make it, because I have the knowledge to do so.
Yeah, it's just a matter of if it could be integrated properly with the convention website.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I would also, in addition to that, have a link on that page to a template in various formats, and that template, you could just fill it out and then email it to us. So there's 2 ways to apply for a panel. Now, the template itself, the way you have to apply for a panel, would be a lot more than most cons ask for. I mean, certain unnamed cons have in the past basically asked us what our names were and what the title of our panel was, and they didn't ever respond. And then we showed up at the panel, and sure enough, there we were. We had a panel listed.
Just by telling them our names and our panel title. They were able to decide which panels to have and which ones not, just based on the titles and the names.
Now, we're talking, they didn't even respond and confirm. We assumed we didn't have a panel.
Yeah, that's kind of...
Even better,
They're
though.
not even trying.
I showed up at the con. I was like, yeah, we're guests. And they just gave us guest badges.
Great. Awesome.
Sadly, a lot of cons are like that, but that's a totally different issue.
Yes.
And I can say that Otakon is good about that.
They are. But pretty much the application form would have your names, and I would not allow you to put the names of you, the contact person, and their email address and your phone number, and the names, email address, and phone numbers of all the other panelists. And I would have a limit on the number of people you could have as panelists.
Now,
maybe like 4.
I think 4 is the absolute maximum I would allow. Now, of course, that is on the application. Obviously, someone could convince me this panel requires more or whatever.
Yes.
But I will say that it has been my experience that any panel that has more than 4 people on it is almost invariably, now again, only fan panels, not industry or whatever, going to be shitty.
Yep.
But again, that's a case-by-case basis thing. But in terms of contact information, one person is applying for the panel. They will give me a list of all the panelists they expect, or if they don't know that right away, then the number of panelists they expect to have.
Yep.
And they will give me, if they can, an alternate contact person in case I cannot reach them. But suffice to say, they're going to have to give me contact info, and if they don't respond, they're probably not going to get a panel.
Yep.
And 2, they have to apply with their real name.
Mm-hmm. Not, Joey Jojo Shavadu. That's not going to work out, right? Next, they got to give me the panel title, or what they'd like the panel title to be.
Or at least the topic of the panel.
Yep. Then they got to give me a description of the panel. And I'm not talking like, this is going to be a panel where I talk about Robotech. That's not going to cut it. I need some paragraphs here, possibly essay quality stuff.
I think for this, we're talking about the initial applications. I need 2 solid paragraphs that describe what you want this panel to be, what bases you want to cover,
how long it should run, what resources you're probably going to need or expect to need, all that sort of stuff.
Yep. And then right after that, there's another section, kind of your con essay, where you have to tell me what cons you've presented for in the past, what panels you have run, what clubs you have run, what experience you have. Maybe you have a public speaking degree or something. I don't care.
Basically, I want to know what credentials you and or any other panelists have that could try to convince me with, your credentials why you're a good panelist. If you say, yeah, I ran this Robotech panel at my local con for like 10 people and it was a huge hit. Let me run it at your con. I guess that's better than nothing. But you're not going to beat out the person who went to Japan and studied anime and is fluent in Japanese and wrote a book on it and has been a public speaker, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I'm going to pick them before I pick you.
Now, obviously, it's not like, oh, if you don't put anything there, or this is your first panel, it's not like we're going to discount you out of hand. That's far from the truth. The point is that...
if your description of what the panel is sounds awesome, and I contact you and you're awesome... It's not going to matter to me that you never did a panel before, because I can tell that you're awesome.
This is all basically just the pre-selection. It's kind of you're trying to sell us on the idea of, I want to run a panel. Is there any reason why we should give you this panel? Is there any reason at all? And even if you say, I've never run a panel before, but I've prepared this and this and this, and I think I can run a good panel. If someone writes a paragraph of why they think they can run a good panel, even if they've never run one before, that's already 1,000 times more than most cons ask for.
Yep. Also, I would make sure to advertise all over the place, not just on the internet, but elsewhere, to make sure that people knew that, here's the panel application. Anyone can fill out this application, because if we're going to be so much more harsh than other cons in deciding who gets a panel and who doesn't, we're going to need a large quantity of applications to filter through. That way, after our harsh filtering, there are enough left over to fill out the con schedule.
Yes, because I see this a lot in con forums where there'll be the thread about panels for the next con coming up, and there'll be a little PM me if you want to run a panel or something stupid like that.
So only people who go to the forum for this convention and join that forum and private message one person get to run panels? That's weak sauce.
Even worse is that you look in those, and a lot of times all the posts are things like, man, it'd be great if there was a blah panel, or someone should run a blah panel. Or people say, yeah, I'd like to run a blah panel. But they don't actually apply. They just kind of say it out into the ether. You've got to make it clear that if you want to run a panel, this is the only way you are going to be able to run a panel. You must fill out this small form. Yes. It is less than a page's worth of writing. You're going to have to write maybe 5 paragraphs. If you can't write 5 paragraphs, you are not cut out to run a panel.
Yep. And also, people suggesting to a fan-run con what panels they should have, the con doesn't decide what panels they should have. It depends on what people offer to run as panels. I mean, if the con is sitting there and they have 20 panels and all they get are 20 applications of people who want to run Naruto panels, and that's it, it doesn't matter how bad those panels are. The con pretty much is forced to have 20 Naruto panels or just cancel panels altogether.
But what I would do is I'd have a thread in the forum that basically, after explaining, how to apply and link to the forum and everything, asking, in general, though, what kind of panels do you guys want to see? What do you like in a panel? So at least I can kind of gauge to their interest. I mean, if people are really liking that hot new show, Bacano or whatever, and they really want to see stuff about that thing.
And I have to choose between a good panel about that and a good panel about something old that's not so popular. I'll probably choose the equally good but more popular panel over the equally good, less popular panel.
Now, don't get us wrong. I mean, we made it sound like this is going to be really arduous and horrible, but in this initial, apply for a panel thing, which is going to start almost immediately after the previous con.
The thing we talk about it like it's some bureaucratic fascist nonsense, but really, when you think about it, what is it? You fill out an application, you type in some words, some guys actually read those words and pay attention to them to decide who should have a panel, and in the end, the best panels get panels, and the ones that aren't so good don't get them.
Now, the thing is, this little, at least tell us why you're going to run a panel, is already more of a hurdle than most cons have.
We could even ask a question like, why do you want to run a panel? Or, something fun like that. And then you could sort of gauge the attitude of the people running the panel.
Now, granted, a lot of the information we're asking for might be gotten later, and it will definitely be confirmed later. The idea here is very simple. This is the ulterior motive. There has to be a small, and not necessarily difficult, but at least enough to weed out the stupid people, barrier to entry.
Yep.
And if you can't bring yourself, if you're not willing to put forth the effort to write 1 page worth of why you want to run a panel and what you think this panel should be.
You're not willing to put in the work to run a good panel, and I know your panel's going to suck.
So, we'll have periodic updates and keep reminding people, hey, apply for panels. And we'll set a deadline, not a deadline to apply, but a deadline being that after this point, we are going to start selecting, and the likelihood of you getting a panel will diminish from this point forward. Apply by this date if you want to have a good chance of getting a panel. But if you have a suddenly good idea, you can apply after the date, but it might not be as easy.
And then we'll have an actual deadline, which is This is the schedule. End of story.
Well, the deadline as in, at this date, we will no longer be accepting panel applications from this. At that point, we are only going to be accepting panels from the list of panels that have already been submitted.
Yeah, and that's pretty much all we would do before the actual convention itself. You know, I mean, what else are you going to do before the convention besides take the applications and sort the wheat from the chaff, maintain contact with panelists, and make sure that everyone knows exactly what they have to do at the convention. Make sure everyone has all the information necessary, and if anything screws up, make sure that it's never our fault and it's always their fault.
Now, in terms of selecting the panelists, I mean, I'm not going to go into super great detail, but we could if people ask. If any cons out there want some details, I'm sure we can send you an email. But basically, it would just come down to, one, did the people spell properly?
Yep.
Was the application and the follow-up emails professional? Do they respond in a timely manner? Do they actually answer the questions I ask them?
Does their panel sound interesting? Is their panel different from other panels? Is it, does it not just interest me, but does it interest other people that I tell about it?
If I bring up a concern, can they answer to that concern?
Yeah, like, I think your panel might go over time. Can you convince me that it's only going to be an hour long, and then we'll see what they say.
Or I think your panel might be a little too hardcore for this convention and the audience. Do you think you could tone it down a little, or could we at least set a set of guidelines? Basically, once we've narrowed it down to like the finalists, like the panels that we're pretty sure we're going to have, we'd start talking to the panelists that we know we want on a much more intimate basis. Like, we'd work with them and we'd come to a consensus as to exactly how this panel is going to be run.
Yep. Now, at the convention itself, what are you going to do? You got all these people. They may or may not show up. You got to do something with them, and you got to make sure everyone gets to their panel room on time, runs their panel, has the equipment they need, knows what the score is, runs their panels, and then gets out of the room on time.
Now, first off, as soon as the schedule is finalized, which of course is before the con, but it'll also be double finalized at the con, every panelist has got to check in. I mean, during registration, they get their con badge, whatever. I'm sure the panelists are comped in some way. We'll have a system for that. That varies so much by con that we can't talk about it.
Yep.
But when you pick up your badge, you must then immediately, and you will be reminded, you'll be flagged as a panelist in some way. You will be told to go to panel ops
where we are sitting
and check in personally with us. If you can't do it for whatever reason, you've got to check in at some point before your panel.
If possible, I would have a system where I would have a pre-made badge for each panelist, and they would have to come and get it from me. That way, I would know physically, these people aren't here. I have their badges.
Yep.
I will assume that they're not here. If they bought a badge, screw them.
Now, Kineticon did this really well. When you show up, like when we showed up, we went to the panel ops, they came over, and they gave us an itinerary. It showed us any and all of the panels we were running. It showed us all the contact info we needed, all the rules, all the room numbers, all the times, every possible piece of information we could need on this piece of paper.
It was like a personal schedule for us at the convention. I would have a personal schedule and personal information sheet, just one piece of paper per panelist, so that if they had that, I would say, hold on to this piece of paper. May I give them 2 copies each? What is this? A couple copies? Big deal.
Yeah.
Right? This paper tells you what you need to do with this con. You will do what this piece of paper says. You will sign this piece of paper in front of me. I will have a signed copy of this piece of paper so I can come and get you. Your phone number, I will have everything. I'll call your cell phone with you standing in front of me so I know it rings. Well, you're not lying to me. I'll do whatever I have to do to make sure you do what that piece of paper says, because that's what you promised you would do in order to get this free badge I'm handing you. And if you don't do it, you didn't earn your free badge, and I'm going to come and get you.
Now, depending on the scheduling and all that, if the schedule for the con, for whatever reason, couldn't be finalized until very close to the con, then I would definitely make some leeway or have backups that we'll talk about later for the panels for the morning on Friday and the morning on Saturday.
There would definitely be quite a few backup panelists ready to go, including myself. I could run a panel at just spur of the moment, bam, if it ever needs to be.
But anyways, we'll skip on some of those details just because while we have thought of them, in fact, we have thought of this in excruciating detail. Like, we have the go plan ready, but we really can't get into that much detail or this would be 3 hours long.
Yep.
But if a panelist did not check in within a certain number of hours before their panel was due to go, with exceptions for the first panels on Friday morning, which obviously
No
for
one
those,
really goes to so much anyway.
except at Kineticon.
Yeah.
But for those people, we would have worked something out ahead of time. Some sort of, all right, dude, are you cool with running a panel at 10 a.m. on Friday? We're going to make sure you get your badge right away. You get right in. You don't need to check in with me. Just go to your panel and do your thing.
Yep.
But for everyone else, if you haven't checked in, let's say 3 hours at minimum before your panel is canceled.
Period.
We will probably try to call your cell phone, which you have provided to us, and if you don't answer, your panel is canceled. If you answer and you tell us that you're going to be there, you were just delayed, all right. But suffice to say, I'm going to say that a lot because Jim Files doesn't like it. Suffice to say, your panel is canceled.
Yes.
Now, a lot of cons, they try to accommodate panelists who screw up or show up late or whatever.
Accommodating guests is different from accommodating panelists.
You accommodate the guests. If a panel has to be moved because a guest needs a time slot, we deal with that because the guests definitely have precedence.
Guests get whatever they want. Panelists get the short end of the stick. You're a fan. You're running a panel in exchange for a free badge. If I screw you over, you're still gonna get your free badge.
Yes.
If you screw me over, you're getting in trouble. You know?
So if a panelist doesn't show up and doesn't check in, no panel. Now at that point, the schedule change is going to be, made at the room. It's not going to be announced over the PA because most cons don't have anything like that. But basically, what we would do is for all the panels that were good but we couldn't fit them into the schedule, or just for people who were willing to take on this responsibility, who had a good panel, who said, I'm willing to be the backup panelist, we would run a backup panel. We would have a list of people who, in a pinch, maybe just staffers who, could run a funny thing, will be ready to be in that room at the time the panel was supposed to start, announce that the panelists failed to show up, and then either try to run an event similarly themed to their event to the best of their ability, which a lot of people could do. I'm pretty confident that I could have run most of the panels that were listed at Otakon and Katsucon last year.
I mean, I would have 2 or 3 awesome people who I know could run a panel at just any moment. Like, hey, can you run a panel right now? Yes, I can, because I don't suck. And bam, they run a panel when everyone gets canceled. And I really don't think it's going to be likely, even at the biggest of cons, for there to be like 4 or 5 simultaneous panels all canceled. That's just not going to happen.
Now also, if we can't do something like that, we just don't have someone who could run that panel, we'll probably have a couple of predetermined straight-up backup filler panels that are probably going to be comedic in nature.
Or I would have some sort of videoed thing to show in the room, because all panel rooms usually have a projector and such. I could show a video of a panel in the room or something else interesting, while instead of a canceled panel, I could use a video as the replacement panel.
The point is, if a panelist didn't show up, someone would be at that panel room from the con to say exactly what happened and to say, here's what we were going to do to make this up for you. Enjoy the alternate events.
Yep. And the thing is, there's a lot of complaining always about, like, con members and con guests who go around and they say, oh, I went to the panel, it was moved. Oh, I went to this. Every panel at every con I've ever been to, right, they've always had a staffer at every panel. I mean, Otakon does it, Kineticon does it. If there's a panel, there's one staff person assigned to deal with that panel. That staff person, I mean, they're doing a good job, but their responsibilities are relatively few. I mean, they basically have to sit at the panel and make sure there's no hokey pokey going on and such, right? I would make it so that they also, if there's any change at all in that panel, would be announcing it constantly, saying, the such and such panel that was originally scheduled for this room has been canceled. This panel will be here instead. Blah, blah, blah. Just constantly as people are coming in so that everyone knows. I would have them kick panelists out of the room as soon as their time is up. I would have them make sure that they know how all the equipment in the room works so they can deal with if there's a problem. And if there's some sort of contractor who deals with the equipment, that they would be in the room at the start of all the panels. I would have that staffer sort of keep track of what they thought of the panel and what they thought the reaction of the people attending the panel was. You know, did the people at the panel seem to like it? Were they upset? Did a lot of people leave? Did a lot of people not show up? write down, count how many people are in the panel when it's like the biggest, and write it down.
Yes, Kineticon actually took our advice this past year, and the staffers went around and counted the audience.
Well, one staff guy who was awesome.
Well, yeah.
He had the con schedule in his hand, and basically every box on the schedule that was a panel, he wrote the attendance number in the box. So at the end, he had this schedule full of attendance numbers on every single event, and it was pretty cool.
Basically, just have the staffers who are in the rooms dealing with these panels take as much information as they can, and even give them a means to do so, and then that way we can go through that after the fact and find out, like, this panel was really popular among the people who went, but not many people went, maybe because it was alternate to the cosplay. Let's let these people run the exact same panel at a better time next year. Or a lot of people came to this panel and a lot of people walked out.
Yeah, I mean,
those
it's like,
people are never coming back.
It does seem to me like a lot of people, there seems to be like these half-truths about, oh, if you're running your panel against the cosplay, no one's going to come. If you're running your panel early Sunday morning, that's a bad time. That's a good time. Well, who really keeps numbers and who really knows what's a good time and what's a bad time? I used to think that, like, Saturday morning was a good time, and Saturday afternoon was also a good time, and Friday morning was a really bad time, but I've seen Friday morning panels that are packed and Saturday afternoon panels that are empty. So,
dude, our How to Run an Anime Club panel at Kineticon was standing room only Friday morning.
Yeah, so I think a lot of those things are not really true, and we need to. It would be a good idea to collect statistics of some sort of metric, however unscientific, to help you figure it out. Plus, if you see, for instance, hey, there were like 4 panels that started at the same time as the cosplay, and one of them had a whole ton of people and the other ones were empty. Maybe I should put, that panel must have a really big draw. I'll put that at a different time, not concurrent with the masquerade, and I'll put 4 of these average panels from another time there, and keep mixing it up until you figure it out to get the highest total panel attendance across the board.
Now, to make this easy for those staffers, I just make a little form that just has a bunch of little boxes, little checks and little things and little boxes to write quick things in, and just make it really, really simple. How much did people clap? Like on a scale of 1 to 5, how much did people cheer when it was done? Did the panelists show up on time?
Did they leave on time?
Did they start their panel on time? Did they sit up on stage and mumble for 5 minutes before they were ready? All that.
Was there any problems with the equipment? If so, what? Were they resolved? Et cetera, et cetera. And I would have a little piece of paper one of these pieces of paper would be filled out for every panel. And at the end, after the con, I can go through these pieces of paper, and I'm not going to use them as some sort of ultimate decision maker, like, oh, no one clapped at this panel, it's gone. But I will examine them all and add the math up and take the stats and use them in my considerations for how to make the panels better next year.
Like a few years down the road, let's say that there's one group of people who always run the same kind of panels. And every year, a lot of people show up to the panel.
No matter what time it is.
And then also, a lot of people leave the panel early, and the applause are pretty and a lot of people are disappointed with the panel in the forums after the con. I'm probably going to get rid of that panel, or obviously the panel idea is good. I will not let them run that panel. I'll try to find someone else to run a similar panel.
Yes, because if you see something like that, you know that the title of the panel or the description of it in the con book are very appealing and have a big draw, but the way the panel is run or the content of the panel isn't interesting to people and they leave. So I would keep the title and description and get someone else to run it, or get the people who run it to run it differently to get people to stay. Probably just change the people, because it's pretty hard to get people to run something differently.
Yeah. Now, I mean, really, we talk about people, and we're not going to go into the whole vetting process, but by emailing these people, I would try to get a sense of if they really care about their panel or not, and if they're going to do a good job. For any big panels or panels that are going to be important for whatever reason, I would probably try to arrange a time to call them on the phone and talk to them in person.
Yeah, why not? I mean, I'm not doing anything else all year. I mean, if my panel's more than once annually, probably couldn't do this much. Probably had to cut it back a little bit. But if my panel's once a year, I got plenty of time to arrange all of this all year. I'm not doing anything else. I don't have any other responsibilities other than at the con itself. So why not do as much as I can to make the panels as good as I can?
Yeah, I mean, look at this. Basically, all we've really said we do is have an actual definitive, good, and consistent year-to-year process for applying to panels, apply rigorous standards to panelists, and not allow someone who is obviously going to do a crappy job to have a panel in the first place, to have the con pay attention to who runs panels and how well they go over in order to determine how to let panels get run the next years. and then to follow up with people who run good panels to make sure they continue to run good panels in the future.
And repeat this process every year, and your panels will start out awesome and get more awesome. The only way this process can be screwed over is if no one good wants to run panels, or if demand and people don't want to run panels anymore.
Now, here's the
or
thing.
Something.
It's always it's a passive process with most cons, but in addition to, soliciting, hey, you want to run a panel in general on the website, I would seek out people who I had seen run good panels in the past, or people who I know could run a good panel, or people who were recommended to me by other people I trust, and ask them, hey, we would like you to run a panel. Would you like to? If so, you can skip the process and send me this information.
Yeah, I mean, I'd go to other conventions or go to other conventions' message boards, and if I see a lot of people saying, OMG, at, something con 2 states away, that this panel went over crazily well and packed the house and everyone loved it, I would find out who did it and call them up and see if they could do the same thing again for my con, which is 2 states away, and thus more people would enjoy the greatness that is their panel.
Yep. They might not be able to, but it's worth a shot. I mean, it can't hurt.
Yeah.
And also, that's a good way to find better panelists.
It's the same way you find better AMVs. Did your AMV win a year before, in the previous year at another convention? If so, you can have it at my convention. Was your panel a hit at another convention this year? You can run it again at my convention. That way my convention would sort of be the best of, but in that way it would also be the best. Better than the others anyway.
All right, I think that's enough about that. But I do want to say that everything we've said, and I'm dead serious, Scott and I alone could handle 100% of that except for the @con stuff. And honestly, Geeknights as an organization, we have the staff personally to handle the @con part as well.
If it's the convention's too big, we might need gophers under those people, but the conventions have gophers.
Yeah. Plus, we could get some gophers if we needed to.
We probably
could.
Because
the point is we have staff. Now, I'm not saying this to try to convince conventions to let us do it. All I'm saying is it wouldn't be that hard to do what we just said.
No, it wouldn't. And if you think that is too hard, then maybe you're lazy. I don't know.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Odeo. Just click the link that says Send Me an Odeo on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.